I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only
What's
one.
up, everybody? Welcome to my channel.
No one
I'm
likes being
Sunshinery. Make
lied
sure
to.
to subscribe and like this video.
You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Thank you all for bearing with me. I have been so sick the last couple days that this would have gotten out much sooner, but I've just had a fever. I felt like I was dying. My boyfriend was sick before that, so a lot has just been going on. But I'm back, and we are here for a Rachel Goes Rogue, Chapter 19, Why You Gotta Be So Mean? Now, this follows up her episode that she just did with Joe, and the show notes say, Rachel definitely knows what it's like to read nasty, brutal comments on social media, but occasionally criticism can be valid. Rachel, along with Dr. Robbie, faced the comments and haters head on. Now, I personally have not left any comments or anything on her Rachel Goes Rogue Instagram page. I've only given my criticism here so that you guys can hear, and I comment back with you guys and we have discussions about everything that's going on. But I'd like to see what kind of comments she reads, and it's a long one, so let's see what is happening and we'll just go right into it. And I will have chapter 20 out as soon as this is done. So make sure to like this video. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel and make sure your notifications are set to all. All right, let's listen to what Rachel has to say about mean comments.
Welcome to another episode of Rachel Goes Rogue. This is your host, Rachel Savannah Leviss. Being in the public eye, especially now with this podcast and choosing to put myself out there, I am opening myself up for judgment and comments on social media. And I think that's just part of being in the public eye, unfortunately. It's a trade-off almost. Like, I gave up my right to privacy in a way, and by choosing to put myself out there, I have to accept the criticism that comes my way. But some of these comments are they're heartbreaking to read. And it seems like they are meant to hurt me. I've been staying away from social media because I would just rather not read that and consume what other people's perception of me is, because I know who I am. I know what's true in my heart and how much work I've done on myself to better myself. And with my iHeart producers, they have some questions, and I wanted to read some of these comments and express the feelings that come up.
So when you read these comments, does it affect your sense of self?
It can. It can if I let it. I think that the comments are very shaming, and I already feel shame around my actions and what I did. And I did mess up. I recognize that. And so when somebody's bringing that up and bringing that up and pointing that out and not letting you evolve as a person, it keeps you in this certain mindset where it's like, oh, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I haven't grown and changed. Like, maybe I am bad. All of those things do creep in. If you read enough of these comments, you start to believe it.
This is just not a thing with celebrities. It's a thing all across social media in general. If you decide to put yourself out there as a creator, even as somebody that just has an opinion and leaves a comment, you can get scrutinized. You could receive mean comments back. And there are just so many cruel people out there that don't realize that the words that they use can hurt an individual, whether they know them or not. This is a big thing with kids being on social media and even adults, and how it's affecting people nowadays, because we did not have social media like we used to back in the day to understand the impacts it can make on anybody. Even myself as a creator, I get nasty comments all the time. I have people that make nasty videos about me just because they don't like who I am or what I have said or my opinions about topics that I talk about or go and discuss on other people's channels. And when even getting into this game of YouTube, I was told you have to have really thick skin because there are going to be people out there, regardless, that are just going to hate your guts to hate your guts. And it's so true. And it's sad that it's even something that you have to worry about. But even growing up with the tabloids and just following celebrities in magazines, people have always not had the best opinions about others and have said things that maybe they don't truly mean, but did to hurt an individual. I don't think it's very necessary to sit there and berate her on her comment section about what she did with Sandoval. I think that's just pathetic and childish. And if you are constantly sitting there leaving comments about what she did, you're not helping anything. You yourself need to grow up and move on. Now, if you are talking about something that she's discussing and she's mentioning and you're leaving a comment based on what she is saying and doing, then that is your opinion and you are entitled to it. And I just feel, me personally, when I leave comments, I try to reflect on who I am as a person. And I just don't like going out of my way to be mean to somebody, especially somebody I don't know. Now, if you're coming at me mean, I might be a little petty back, but for the most part, I'm still going to wish you well because that's who I am. I wish anybody well that is going through a tough time in their life that they have to be so hateful to somebody that they don't even know. Like, that's just crazy to me. But this is where we are, and let's get started, I guess, with these mean comments, since this is like her intro to it all.
In one of the comments, someone said her time in whatever joke of a program she attended was clearly a waste of time and money. She didn't learn a damn thing. How does that make you feel?
I know that I've learned a lot from my time in this recovery center. I really dedicated myself to grow and to look at my patterns and my behaviors, and I knew I had an issue and I wanted to get help, and that's why I decided to stay longer than the 45 days. I also knew that the environment that I was in was bringing out the worst in me. So reading something like that, it's a joke of a program and a waste of time and money. Like, I know that it was a great investment because relatively I'm on the younger side of people figuring out their life and making big changes. But then I also think it's like it's minimizing my experience.
Somebody wrote, Raquel is the kind of woman that is loved by men and hated by women. She looks for validation from men. She's pathetic. How does that make you feel?
Well, I can accept the fact that I was seeking validation in men, and that was a huge part of the problems that I was having. I am choosing to prioritize healthy female friendship in my life, and it looks a lot different than the way that I've been acting before and my priorities before. So I think it's just unfortunate that people are able to label somebody and judge somebody for their absolute worst behavior and then be like, nope, that's you forever in this box and you're not capable of change.
Firstly, no one can say a program is useless or worthless or a waste of money if they themselves did not attend that program to know what that program had to offer. Maybe she didn't utilize all of the benefits of that program, or maybe she didn't take with her all of the lessons that she learned. It does not mean, though, that that program was a waste. Maybe it was a waste in their mind for her, but she is stating that it was not a waste for her. And I have seen growth in Rachel in certain areas that she wasn't before. Like, she wasn't very talkative. She was very shy. She was very much closed off and let others speak for her, where she's finally speaking up for herself. She's finally having a voice that she knows how to use, whether it's good or bad, and she's speaking her mind. Right there shows progression. Whether good or bad progression, it shows that she knows how to speak for herself, where before we felt like others were speaking for her, whether it be Sandoval or James. That was something that was an issue. Just like her finding validation in men, the girl's been single now for over a year. Give her a little bit of credit that she's not going and throwing herself at men to feel validation with who she is now. I can give credit where credit is due. I might not agree with everything that Rachel says and does, but I can understand there has been some growth, there has been some progress, and she is learning about herself. And when you are learning about yourself, you are going to make mistakes. You are going to be vulnerable. You're going to learn. As long as you take those lessons and you keep learning, there's nothing wrong with growth, and keep moving on and growing and learning about yourself.
Somebody said this girl is doing herself no favors. Instead of cleaning up her image, she's coming off as petty and immature. How does that feel?
Okay, maybe I am petty and immature sometimes. We're human. Like with the whole Katie Dana Instagram post, yeah, that was petty. But I'm able to acknowledge that. I'm able to be aware of that, and I'm able to take accountability and change. Like I'm choosing better for next time.
Okay, this one I think is pretty low. I'm betting Raquel's adopted family is regretting adopting her right now. They're probably so embarrassed and humiliated by her actions and stupidity. They certainly didn't bring this horrid mistake of cells into the world to create this maelstrom on global TV.
Gosh, this horrid mistake of cells into the world.
Yeah.
Jeez, that is low. Um, Reading comments like this makes me question like who this person is and how they think, the dialogue that goes on in their own brain. And I'm even hesitant to talk about my family because anytime I bring my family up, people see that as an opportunity to, I don't know, get creative with these comments and take some jabs that are so low and unnecessary. I'm very blessed to have the family that I do with my adoption, and they are still proud of me, even though I've made some mistakes. I think they're more concerned for my safety than anything. And they're very proud of how far I have come. And they're very happy that I'm not on the show anymore. So, yeah, reading something like this, it's very painful.
Now, what she did with the Katie and Dana Instagram post was petty and immature. And she can say that she took accountability by, texting them and apologizing and then getting on her podcast and saying how guilty she felt afterwards. And then in the next breath have Joe on there bashing the girls again. Especially after these girls, whether sincere or not, which we won't get into that now, they just apologized to Joe on the reunion and said they felt bad for her and everything that she went through with Schwartz. And they took ownership for their actions. And yet they were still being petty betties after that. And that, I think, yes, is a problem. Because did you take accountability? You did. But then you continued being petty and Betty and doing what you did with Joe, that it did not show any kind of remorse that you actually said you felt. Now, the adopted parents comment, that was fucking low. And I know I have discussed on here that I do feel like maybe there is more to some of her more personal insides to what she's feeling and going through that maybe have some reflection onto that, but that is her business. That is whether she wants to talk about it or not. That is not up to me to discuss, and I don't know the dynamic. I only know what we've been told and what we've been shown. I do have friends that have been adopted to understand that no matter what, even if they have supportive, loving families, they struggle even in that sense, to understand why their bio parent gave them up or bio parents gave them up. If that is something she's struggling with and she wants to talk about it, that's up to her. But it's not up to you guys to make comments like that where you have no fucking idea what her family feels. Let alone, that is just like, would you want someone saying that to you? My thing too is like, do unto others that you would want done to you. So would you want a nasty comment saying, I bet your family thinks you're a fucking disgrace and you're blah, blah, blah? Like, no, I wouldn't. So I'm not going to go and do that to somebody else. I think we need to be more aware of what we say and do.
So some fans have said this: I was riding hard for you until you decided to sue the person you victimized.
Choosing to take legal action was not something that I chose lightly. I really had to weigh all of the pros and cons, and one of the cons was the public's reaction to it. I saw this coming, and that's just something that I had to debate and realize that if I want to seek legal action against Tom, then I also have to seek legal action against Ariana. Yeah, what I did was not morally right, but recording and distributing a video is also not right. So they're two separate instances. One is illegal. So that's hard. It's hard, like, because I do feel guilty. Yeah, I feel guilty for potentially causing more pain than I've already caused somebody. But then I also take a look at like what I've been through, and I've been through a lot. And I just don't think that it's right or fair or just. If we're all out to hold each other accountable, then I guess I'm doing the same.
And I know I say this every single time she mentions the lawsuit, but if you wanted to bring justice to what happened to you, why did you never file a police report and criminally charge him for recording you illegally? That has more impact. That is telling somebody you cannot do that without permission, and what you did was wrong. When you do it in a civil suit matter, that either means, one, you couldn't go after them criminally because maybe they didn't actually do something wrong that they can criminally get charged with, and this is your next means of going after them, because you can go after them civilly without having criminally been charged of something. And if you want to be real, Rachel, because I've worked in a law firm, so I know, you didn't really have to go after Ariana. You chose to because you wanted to hold them both accountable. You can't hold one without the other. No. You could have held Tom accountable for what he did, because if Tom never did that, then Ariana never would have seen it, let alone then probably known that you and him were having an affair. But that's nor here nor there. And she needed to weigh out too, and I don't think she realizes this, though she was probably told by her attorney that this can take years and years. And if this is something that you want to fight, you need to be realizing that this isn't going to just have an answer tomorrow or be resolved in a year. This can take 2, 3, 4, even 5 years in a court system. All depends on the judge, the system, what gets filed, and all of that. And for someone that says they want to move on, it's kind of like standing still when you are having a case against people that you're trying to move on from. That's just my opinion. But hey, that's my opinion and my opinion. I want to know what you guys think about the lawsuit. What do you think about all of this? Let me know down below. And if you don't know about the lawsuit, I do have a video here on my channel where we go over the complete filing of the complaint that she filed about why she wanted to go after Tom and Ariana. And you'll be surprised what is in that complaint. I will tell you that.
Here's another one, Rachel. She's not changed in the slightest. I thought for your mental health, you were staying away from VPR. Now her podcast is talking all about people on VPR. FYI, she still sounds like she's crying with every sentence she speaks.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is just my voice and I've had to accept it. But I would like to stay away from Vanderpump Rules. Unfortunately, this show is still bringing me up as a topic of discussion and as a storyline point. So it's only natural for me to want to not only defend myself, but like share my experience with this because there's more to the story just than this black and white. This is a villain, this is a hero, and that's it. Like it's way more nuanced than that. And I am prioritizing my mental health by not being an active participant in this show any longer. They're bringing me in involuntarily. I have no choice what they say about me. But with time, I will be removed from Vanderpump Rules. And I honestly don't feel like I am dissing the cast members of Vanderpump Rules. I think I'm sharing things honestly and being reflective of my relationships that I've had with certain people from more of a healed place. So my perspective is a little bit different. Me prioritizing my mental health may look different than what you would think that it is. But for me, having my own podcast is part of what makes me feel so empowered today that I get to reclaim my narrative. I get to, as much as possible, take away, Vanderpump Rules' power to create whatever narrative they want about me, which they're doing anyway. And I'm being honest and truthful and being authentic to who I really am and choosing to share that with others. I think it's important to remember that Vanderpump Rules has been part of my life for all of my 20s, like nearly 9 years that this show has been part of my human experience. And so by talking about it, I'm able to process through it. And it is this developmental process where eventually, yeah, I will be able to stop talking about Vanderpump Rules. But I feel like it's very unrealistic to expect somebody to completely disconnect and disassociate from part of their life that has been so integral into their development of who they are today.
And unfortunately, your impact with this show is where they are this season. They literally just came out of finding out you and Tom were having an affair for 7 fucking months behind people's backs. This was then shot 2 to 3 months later, after the news broke, after the reunion, where they were all still trying to process everything that they were being told, that they realized, this was something she lied about, this was something he lied about, this was something they did that we had no clue, and processing all of everything that happened. That is why, yes, your name keeps getting brought up. And if you realize, the more time passes, the less your name is involved. I think that she forgets she has impacted so many people's lives with the lies and manipulation that she created with Sandoval. And those pieces are being picked up this season. Just like she was trying to pick up the pieces of her own mess on her own accord. They have to do it in front of a camera. That is what they have been doing for how many years? And she said 9 years? Maybe you've been involved with Vanderpump because of James for 9 years, but you have not been on the show for 9 years, honey. And I understand that you are also healing from everything that you were a part of when you were a part of the show. So then don't sit here and say that you want to not have anything to do with Vanderpump Rules when you just said it yourself that you want to have the ability to continue to talk about the experiences that you went through because of it. That's the issue. You're saying one thing, but then doing another. But then clearly saying here that that's what you're going to do. And let's just be real too. The recaps that she's been giving about Vanderpump, some of the things have nothing to do with her at all. Nothing. And yet she's judging what she is seeing and everything that's happening based off what she knew about people. And these people, just like herself, are a lot different than they were last season because of everything that they've been through. She cannot sit here and say that she knows who Ariana is anymore, just like Ariana can not sit there and say she knows who Rachel is nowadays, because they are both two different people and they've come such a long way in such a short time because of everything that's gone on in their life, along with everybody else. I know I'm using those two as an example, but like everybody has changed, whether for the better or for the worse. They have changed a lot about themselves based on everything they've all been through. And if she keeps, throwing out some petty Betty moves that she keeps doing and involving herself in people's businesses that have nothing to do with her anymore, then it's going to continue that they have, conversations about what she is doing, because they're allowed to talk about how they feel as well and what they went through with everything that happened with you, Rachel. Those are their experiences. Just like you have this podcast to go over yours, they can do that within the show and on their podcast. And there's nothing that anyone can do or say that can make them not talk about what they want to talk about. Let's be real. We can't make you not talk about something that we don't want you to talk about. It's the same for them. It's just how the world works.
Somebody wrote, did she say he didn't have enough integrity to tell her himself? You got to be kidding me. Where was her integrity when she didn't tell her friend she was smashing her man?
No, I totally get that comment. And as I was saying that to Joe, that Schwartz didn't have enough integrity to tell her, I was fully aware that I did not have integrity in that moment to tell Ariana, but I have more integrity now. I own up to the fact that I'm not perfect. Yeah, I didn't have integrity during that time. I was not honest and did not tell Ariana that this is going on. And that was a choice that I made and something that I have to live with. One of the comments says, she has done zero work on herself, and this proves it. She's still suing Ariana, which is shitty alone. Can we stop giving this mistress a platform of listen so she can disappear? Gosh, those comments that are like, can you just disappear or go away? I click on their profile and they're following me. I'm like, okay, like you don't need to comment on my stuff. Just like unfollow me then if you don't want to see it. It's so bizarre. But then it's also like, okay, what does disappear mean? Are you wishing me not to live anymore on this planet? Because sometimes my thought process goes there. It's a lot. It is, because you just feel so damaged and unworthy of love and acceptance. And it can get to a dark place very easily if you let it. I feel like the work that I've done on myself has gotten me to the place where comments like this affect me less. And like, what a relief. It's bizarre too, because I feel like there's these people that write stuff like this, but then there's like people that I will meet in person that approach me and they say that they listen to my podcast and love it, and they acknowledge the work that I've done, and they feel like they've learned something by listening to my podcast is so rewarding. Like those in-person comments like that is like what makes my week. And so I choose to focus on the in-person comments, and I give way less weight to the comments that people make online.
And the problem with comments where they're telling her, I just wish she would disappear, and then she then goes to a different place with that. Well, do they mean they want me to, die or do something to myself? That's where you don't know the context of the message, and now you're pushing it to a limit that you are thinking crazy things that maybe they're not even meaning. And disappear can mean multiple different things when it comes to the internet and social media. And I do agree with her. If you want her to disappear and not see her shit, then why the fuck are you following her? Unfollow. And I think a lot of people have this issue. They talk a lot of shit about a lot of people, but they sit there and they're sitting there indulging in them and looking at everything this person says, does, watches, listens. And it's like, if you do not give a fuck about that person, then you wouldn't be doing that. Because I'll tell you this, if I don't like somebody, I'm not listening to them, I'm not watching them, and I'm not reading anything that they have to fucking say. And there are a lot of people on this platform that have a lot of opinions about me, and I just choose to, well, not give a shit. And they think that I watch their videos. Well, they're wrong. Because I couldn't even tell you what the last video they made was. And that bites their asshole. And that's, where she needs to get to a place too. Like, these people don't matter to her. Those in-person comments, yes, mean a lot, because I'll tell you this, a person that doesn't like you, more than, 80% of the time, they're not going to tell you to your face that they think you're a horrible, nasty, disgusting person. They will hide behind a keyboard any day. But those people that you truly impact and like really love what you do will have not a problem letting you know to your face. I mean, there are those couple people too that are very fake to your face. They say one thing and yet they do something completely different. I mean, this is just the world we live in, unfortunately. But I would take those in-person comments and I would hold them near and dear to my heart for sure. And there are a lot of comments that you guys leave me that I hold near and dear to my heart, and it like really makes me smile and think I'm doing something that I enjoy, and I'm glad that other people are enjoying it, and that makes it all worth the while.
I feel like I need to write out 10 affirmations to counteract all of those negative, mean comments, because focusing on the negative is just going to bring in more negativity. And I do not need that in my life. I don't know why people choose to be so mean in the comments. And I choose to be kind to myself and not to speak to myself that way. But I want more clarity on like why people are so mean in the comment section and why the cast is so mean to each other on this show. I have a therapist joining me today. Dr. Robbie is a nationally known psychotherapist and award-winning reporter. She has appeared on programs like Nightline, CNN, The View, and Wendy Williams. So let's get into that. I want to explore more on why people feel, I don't know, entitled to say some of the things that they say online.
It's such a good question. And we're seeing it a lot now, obviously, because of social media. And people can respond in real time. So there isn't that cool off period. Back in the day, if you were really angry about something, or if you had an issue, let's say with a celebrity or TV show, you would have to take the time to write a letter or an email and find out where to send it. And there were a lot of steps involved. And usually in between having that experience, emotional experience, and having to write something down and send it, the question was, is it really worth it? Is it really worth my time? But now it's so easy. You don't have to have that cool off period of time. And there's something about not being face to face with somebody and being anonymous that all of your aggression can come out, and there's a decreased level of empathy. When you see somebody live face to face, they're more human. They're more three-dimensional. But when you're doing it through the screen, it's like anything goes. And I think our society is crumbling because of that emotionally.
That's so true. Yeah.
First off, I don't think she's going to get any clarity to why people leave mean comments like they do, or why the cast is so mean to each other. You'll never get clarity there. But I will say, this therapist is on point. I do believe that is a big problem with social media and our society, and having that access and being able to be anonymous and saying whatever you want to say behind the keyboard and no one know it's you. And then there are parasocial relationships where people feel like they have more of a relationship and a connection with a creator, a person, a celebrity than they actually do. And that can lead to over emotions and being very emotional and just being nasty and cruel to somebody that probably doesn't even know you exist in that sense. And I'm not trying to be mean, but like, they don't have that same kind of relationship as that person does. And that's what they call parasocial relationships, which is a big thing that happens with social media.
I remove myself because I'm seeing things through like a reality TV lens. And I think the way that the show edits people, it dehumanizes them. So it allows for people to feel more entitled to say whatever they're thinking, because maybe they don't have like that same level of empathy as you would in person. But then also removing myself and just thinking about, this next generation that was brought up on social media and the pressures of appearing a certain way, and it's you only really see the highlights of somebody's life on Instagram
Yeah.
or TikTok or Facebook even. It's just interesting to think, because my generation, I mean, Instagram came out like my last year of high school. So it's a weird transitional period.
Mhm.
So I just think that's interesting.
So let me pick up, Rachel, with what you said, because you talked about two different scenarios that are both very real and slightly different. So with reality TV, what we see is more of a judgment TV, right? It's set up like a novella. And there's the good person, there's the bad person. We tend to see things in terms of good and bad. We like that. It's not complicated. And so people are edited to look a certain way. It doesn't tell the whole story. It's not supposed to, right? It's like a live soap opera. And with reality TV, the audience that's watching becomes very judgmental. And that's part of the fun of it for them. They get to feel morally superior. They get to feel superior and therefore feel entitled, either because they feel they know you or your story or the people in the reality TV story. They're invested in the story and would comment. And it's easier to be mean in some cases than it is to be nice. And in some cases, that's very cathartic, because if we're being really mean and devaluing to somebody else, somebody we don't know, or somebody we feel like we know, even though we don't, then it allows us to be kinder to ourselves. And it really
Really?
helps a person to feel, yes, it helps them to feel better about themselves because it's helping them to not attack themselves.
Now, I don't necessarily agree with the therapist on this, especially with reality TV. I think that with having reality TV and social media, it gives the audience more opportunity to comment and discuss things that are being said and done. And then maybe sometimes overanalyze situations, yes, but it gives that opportunity to have discussion where discussion wasn't a thing until social media kind of was present, where more we would read what the magazine author had to say about something and then maybe discuss it with our friends here and there if they watched the show that we were watching. I think that having others that you can discuss it with can create more opinions and thoughts about what is happening. I don't necessarily think we're entitled, but we are entitled to our opinions and thoughts where we can express them if we choose. I will, though, agree where people that are saying hateful, hurtful things, it's a reflection on how they are hurting inside as a person and maybe what they might be feeling, and it maybe does give that person the opportunity to put hate onto somebody else so they're not hating on themselves, but necessarily it's going to end up that they still have hate for themselves, that because they are spreading hate, it just means they have hate in their heart for who they are, and they don't like what they're doing in life, and they're taking it out on others so that they can feel some sense of relief. I do agree there. It takes a lot more effort to have hate than it does to have love.
If I'm attacking somebody on the screen, if I'm attacking another person, then I'm not attacking myself, because usually people have relationships with others that are parallel to the relationships they have with themselves. So you can think of it as like a kind of a therapeutic intervention that reality TV does. It allows people to feel morally superior, and they may feel envious because this other person is famous or has money or has it easier or whatever the case may be. And a way to equalize that divide is by attacking, is by devaluing, is by feeling, morally superior to these people that they are judging. And that is part of the appeal of reality TV. You get to sit and feel that you're better than these other people. And the problem is that, first of all, reality TV is filled with people who kind of, in a way, didn't understand or sign up for celebrity culture in terms of acting. So maybe an actor or a singer might expect, okay, there's some negative reviews that come with the art that I put out there, or even newscasters or big podcasters. They might say, you know what, I understand. Like, people are going to like me and people are not going to like me. But with reality TV, it's kind of like newbies that are finding their way along the way. And you're real people, and words do hurt, and they can be damaging. And I think that there is that disconnect. But in terms of social media, let's say for the average person, I was just talking with my sister, and she was like, you know, my daughter, my niece looked beautiful for her prom. I mean, perfection. There was no reason not to put up many photos, but she was concerned about the likes, about the comments. And it's a lot to deal with, especially when you're young and growing and your self-esteem is very vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, I have to completely disagree, because no parallels to their life on reality TV parallel to mine. Maybe some examples of what maybe they are going through mentally, or like relationships have like some kind of parallel to maybe what I've been through in my life, but nothing currently or anything that intrigues me that it's like, oh my God, that person's so much like me. No, I actually don't feel like I relate to any of the girls on the show. Like, none of them are like who I am, but I enjoy watching their dynamic, their relationships, how they grow as individuals, what they do with their life. And that's what I enjoy about reality TV. And I don't think that they sign up not knowing. I mean, at first, when reality TV came about, maybe people didn't know what they were signing up for. But nowadays, people are very aware of what they are signing up for and what reality TV can and can't do to them as a person, even through social media, and that people are either going to love you or going to hate you, no matter what it is, whether it's a movie, a show, a radio show, anything, newspaper writer, magazine author, anything. YouTube creator, like literally anything. And then she says, it's a lot to deal with when you're young and you're growing, but she just gave an example that her sister didn't want to post her daughter's prom picture because she was worried about what people will say in the comments and all of that. I don't believe it's just young people. It's anybody at any age that has a social media can be impacted. We are all learning as we go with social media. This has all been a learning experience for everyone involved. We did not have social media back in the day like we do now, and we are all learning as it grows with us and how it can impact our lives as well as other people's lives. And I have friends that would love to also post their photos of their daughter's prom pictures that they just had, and they can't because there are such hateful, nasty people on the internet that will use those photos and do nasty things, even to a child. And that is where we need to get a step up and take some control on what is happening with social media, especially with our laws and our government and all of that. More needs to be done. And people should not be worried that if they post their daughter's prom picture to show how beautiful she looked, that someone else is going to take that and make nasty, horrible remarks or like put things on the photo. I've seen it. I know. It's disgusting what some people will do just to hurt somebody they have no even fucking clue who they are. That is why I don't like social media. And unfortunately, with good comes bad, no matter what it is in life.
I think you brought up a good point with the envy piece, because I was kind of researching the concept of Schadenfreude, the German saying where basically people derive joy out of seeing other people's harm or misfortune.
Yeah, or
And
failures.
or
Yeah.
failures. Yeah. And I think maybe like this is my running theory because as I'm getting
Yeah.
healthier and removing myself from the toxicity that is Vanderpump Rules, I now see it so much differently. Like I see it as the toxic, dysfunctional group. And not only is the group dysfunctional, but like then you're put on a platform for everybody to comment and make judgments on your life.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand like how somebody enjoys watching it because I don't necessarily enjoy watching it.
You know too much. Well, there are two things that go on. One, this is sad but true, but when we see a lot of chaos, it's more interesting, right? In the news, we say, if it bleeds, it leads. So people on the show are encouraged to create drama, to be mean, to be divisive. There's an upside to it because they get more play or people will be more interested in them. And so the show is designed, people on it want to please, and they know what the deal is. If they're part of the drama in the mix, they're going to lead. They're going to be interesting. And if they don't, they're considered boring and not useful. So people within the environment are trying to kind of figure out how to be relevant. And when being relevant is being mean, well, then you just kind of let out your primary impulses. There's no editing. And what we know is if we don't edit what we say, we will have no friendships because we have a lot of noise in our head and we shouldn't be saying all the noise that goes on in our head. In reality TV, it's the opposite. Say all the noise in your head and let's see what happens. And it'll make for a more interesting show.
Mhm.
So there's that piece. And I also think that in some ways it's a displacement, right? We can't talk about our friends that way and still be considered a good friend. You know, we're not going to have relationships in our own personal life if we're saying the most vicious things. We know how that rolls. But if we say really bad things about the people on reality shows or whatever it is, I mean, we can even see it play out in the royal family, right? We don't have any relationship to them, but everybody feels like they know the royal family and can comment. It's safe in many ways. There's no consequences. What's going to happen? Free speech. You can say whatever you want. And, you know, for right now, there's an appeal to that. And it serves a function for the audience. I could be mean. I could say mean things. And it's not going to hurt me in my real life. Is that true? Not necessarily. We really do better when we can rise above and be classy and see things for what they are. But there is a safety net in critiquing, you know, socialites, royalty, reality figures, and actors, or just anyone who has a high profile.
Yeah.
Now, though, I think her using the analogy like, well, look at the royal family. People talk about them and they think that they know everything about them is kind of in par with reality TV, but it also isn't because for them, the royal family is also politics. They control the country. What they do and say has big consequences to what does and does not happen within their country. And that's something that necessarily I don't also know a lot about because I'm not from there, but I do know that they have a big impact with society and people because of their power and their role within the government there. But I will say, she did mention, like, you know, being classy and, you know, not stooping down to those levels and having nice things to say does show who you are as a person. People can say the meanest, cruelest things, but if you sit there and you continue to be who you are, have morals, have standards, have that empathy, even for people that don't have empathy for you, shows who you are as a person. People will see that, people will acknowledge that, and people will know who you are by the choices and the actions and the words that you say. That's also why I like to make this more of a discussion where I want to know what you guys think and what you guys have to say, because I can also learn and grow from a different perspective that maybe I'm not seeing that maybe you do. And I love that we can understand that we don't always have to agree, but our opinions and thoughts are valid. If someone comes on with a mean, nasty comment, that only shows who they are, not who I am. And by me just like still going on there saying, I wish you the best or have a great day, shows who I am. And I think that has a lot to do with who we want to be as people in this world. And no matter how cruel others are, I'm going to continue to be me and try and spread positivity the most that I possibly can, even if I'm having the worst day ever.
Definitely. I feel like as you explain it, it almost sounds like an excuse for how mean the people can be on this show, especially the girls. And
Yeah.
I understand to a certain degree, yes, we're all making a reality TV show for entertainment, but then there seems to be a line that's crossed with complete disregard to how their actions are affecting other people in the group. I'll just give an example. We see, Joe being iced out by the group and being laughed at and talked about. And it's because she doesn't quite fit in like the other girls do. Like she's not as willing to like show off her hair and she'd rather wear a baseball cap at the end of the day. And, she feels awkward in this group where she knows she's not necessarily welcome. And Katie put out a tweet saying, Joe is spooky. I mean, none of us could stand to be around her. Her energy is on par with a crackhead. She is a psycho, and I will also light her on fire with Rachel.
Oof.
And I feel like the problem here is A, calling somebody a crackhead when they don't do drugs. Like Joe has ADHD and she's more high energy, but that doesn't mean that she's a crackhead. And
Yeah.
people are very quick to judge when they don't know you and just know the information that is being put out there. So I feel like that's super damaging. And then also saying, I will light her on fire with Rachel. I think it's dangerous because it's almost endorsing that type of behavior.
Why does Rachel feel the need to bring this up again? And first off, it was not a tweet. Rachel, get your fucking facts straight. It was a comment left on somebody else's Instagram. Real Vanderpump. I know, because I have the receipts. But that was a comment that was said last year. Things have changed. People have seen the situation for what it is. People have apologized. Joe has accepted Katie's apology, yet still talk shit. That's the problem. Even after the IG sizzle fizzle shit, Katie still remained composed and respectful even on the podcast when telling her side of the events. And Rachel acts like she doesn't do the same. She judges people before she even knows them personally. People are going to judge others whether they know them or not. It's part of human nature, unfortunately. That's just how it is. We are going to judge people based off what we see and know, whether it's a little or a lot. Was Katie quick to judge Joe? Yes, she was. Did the things that she say really hurt Joe? Clearly, yes, it did. Were they right? No, they weren't. Has Katie taken accountability? She has. Just like you want people to recognize that you have taken accountability and that you have changed and moved on from the mistakes you made, you need to do the same with others. This is where nobody grows from the situation. Nobody moves on because you keep bringing up things that don't need to be brought up. You could have used something completely different as an example. Not Joe. Let's be real, honey. And what they did to Joe was not right. And I will say that over and over again. They made her so uncomfortable. Even Kristen stood up for Joe. Whether Joe saw it or not, Kristen stuck up for her. Which at the end, I will go over some receipts that Read and Receipts IG put out that Joe had, I guess, like a little interview that she did, and she answered some questions, and I'd love to show those for you guys. So we will get into that later. But point is, this was not really the best example that you should have been bringing up again? Or why don't you use yourself as an example and base it off of something that you did, that you learned from, and that you can say with experience, like, what I did wasn't right, and I learned from that situation. But to me, that's just a little bit of deflection. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know down below.
Or what is made okay? There are different rules in different environments. So you bring up a great point. What is the rule within the Vanderpump environment? The rule is be as cruel as you want to be. That's the rule. And the more clever you are at it, the more talked about you'll be, and the more, it's kind of like twerking journalism, the more it'll get noticed. I think there's that. But you bring up a really good point in terms of mental illness, mental well-being, and diagnosis. So there are certain people who have a diagnosis which will allow them to be more cruel. And sometimes it's a mood disorder that's unrecognized, where they're just more irritable and nasty. Sometimes it's a character pathology. We hear a lot about narcissism, but borderline personality, or people who have sociopathic tendencies, may get high off. Well, in the borderline, they see people in terms of all good or all bad. There's no gray. And that's not true, but that's how they experience people. And they can't regulate their own emotions. So they discharge all of that rage because they can't metabolize it themselves the way, let's say, a person who is more well could. So there's the borderline, there's the narcissistic kind of sociopathic tendencies where they really don't have empathy towards another person. And so they don't consider their feelings. The other person doesn't really matter. The only person that matters is themselves. And then there's the point about sadism in general. The act of being mean or intentionally cruel, it helps a person to, in the moment, feel powerful. Kind of this idea of either you're the bully or you're the bullied. And people take two sides. Well, I'm not going to be the bullied, so I better be the bully. And it's kind of this mindset of kind of, again, either or thinking. But when you're in a mean space, you feel momentarily powerful and you're not feeling vulnerable. And who wants to feel vulnerable? Who wants to cry on the show? Who wants to feel, like a victim? Who wants to show that they're weak? Because the more weak a person is, the more likely these personalities will go after you.
I've experienced it. Yeah. I mean, perceived weakness, because I'm just more of a kind, forgiving person.
Yeah.
And that's seen as weakness to some of them because I'm not I guess.
You're not aggressive. You're not
right.
as aggressive.
I'm not aggressive.
And we're not perfect people. And not only that, okay, so let's talk about, like, in your situation, you were then, the person, the friend that went with the friend's boyfriend. So there are a lot of people watching, and men somehow get off a little easier than women. Women are just way easier to demonize because we expect so much from women that whenever they're not perfect, they get critiqued and smashed, right? So we know that to be true culturally. But the other piece is, it reminds somebody of their own situation. Oh, that person in the show is just like my friend Marianne who did that, and they start to personalize the situation. And it's almost like they're experiencing it themselves. I was cheated on, or somebody cheated on my boyfriend. And they may even see certain personality traits in the other person that they have in themselves that they don't like. But again, it's easier to critique the other person rather than to own up and say, I have those tendencies too.
And this is why I say, too, that I feel like Scandoval got as big as it did because so many people could relate to what was happening. How Ariana felt, how Scheana felt, how Lala felt, how Katie felt, how everybody was feeling. It was things that people could relate to, maybe in their personal life or within their own friend group, that was something that had happened, that they were lied to and they were led to believe something that was not true. That wasn't what was happening. One thing was happening, yet another thing was said. It resonated with so many people, and that's what reality TV does do. Yes, it resonates with people, especially experiences, situations, what they're going through in life, how they're feeling. And I do agree with people having different mental health issues that maybe they are just not aware of, aka Sandoval. I've said he has narcissistic characteristics, in my opinion. I'm not diagnosing him, but there are things that he lacks, which is empathy, and he only gives a shit about himself and nobody else, where those things make it so he does certain things and says certain things, yes, for the limelight, for the attention, and because that's who he is.
Like, let's be honest, we all have a tendency to be selfish or impulsive in the moment and not think about cause and effect. So, that's what you're not seeing. People not wanting to own that piece. And it plays out the way you personally have experienced and the way, a lot of people who are high profile have to experience. It's kind of part of the job.
Yeah. There's a thing called justice-based Schadenfreude, and it's a feeling that we experience when someone finally gets what they deserve, and that like satisfaction when a murderer or a scammer gets rightfully convicted for their wrongdoings, then we feel that satisfaction. And I think maybe in my situation with, the Scandoval, maybe people were so quick to dogpile on because it was like, this is morally wrong. And we feel deceived by this person because she seems to put up maybe quote unquote a front that she's a nice, kind person. But in reality, she's been deceitful and has been keeping lies and not being truthful with her actions. And
you're absolutely right. There's no interest in the nuance. Like,
right.
We don't know why this happened. We don't know the inner dynamics. We don't know what was going on behind closed doors, between Tom and Ariana. We don't know. We have no idea. No clue. And there's no interest in the nuance because that's too complex. That's too difficult. Why understand that? Isn't even the point of reality TV, right? It's not like you want, to get your doctoral thesis. You want to watch it because it's easy to watch. There's a good person. There's a pretty person. There's a bad person. There's a rich person. There's an unfit person. There's an addicted person. They almost become their labels. And, it's an easy way, as we said, judgment TV to feel morally superior. And we do like to see the bad guy burn, right? We do like to see, karmic justice. The problem is we don't know the whole story.
My thing in life is that karma will come around when karma comes around. If you are doing good, good karma will come. If you are doing bad, the bad karma will come and bite you in your ass. That's how it works. You put out good in the world, you get good back. You put out bad in the world, you get bad back. And sometimes, you have to wait, but people always get what they deserve. And she, in my opinion, still feels like she was manipulated. She used the word groom. She feels like what happened to her would have never happened if she wasn't manipulated and made to believe this, made to feel this way, that her actions don't have consequences. That she was a victim in all of this as well. Where I do feel like, yes, she was led to believe things maybe that weren't actually happening, or she was told one thing and another thing was actually happening. That was, yes, on Tom. She, though, allowed herself to continue to keeping on with the lie and the manipulation, though she knew it was wrong. And then when everybody found out, all of a sudden, she's a victim. And I'm not saying that she's not a victim to what Tom said and did to manipulate her, because I do believe there was manipulation there. I also do feel like she morally knew what was right and what was wrong, and she wanted to feel that love that she had never felt before, that it was so enticing to her that she didn't give a fuck what anybody else had to say or think. And that's where she needs to take accountability and realize that some of what she got back from the world is what she put out and what she did. Just like I know when I was a fuck up, I know I fucked up in life. I got what I deserved. And the more that I keep doing good, the more that I keep progressing, the more that I keep putting positivity out there, the better it is for me and how I feel, even about myself. She has a lot of growing to do and a lot of learning. That's what I think. What do you guys think about all this? I love hearing what you guys have to say. And I know I say that all the time, but I really do enjoy hearing what you all have to say.
And we may never know the whole story.
Yeah, and that's like one of the reasons why when I was weighing out the pros and cons, which I had a long running list, it was part of the reason why I chose not to go back, because I knew that my story wouldn't be represented accurately, because I'm a much more complex person than just someone who's labeled as deceitful. And even like the producers would tell me, we have to keep it very basic. Like we have to keep this like a 5-year-old can watch this and follow along.
My exact point. It's not a
Yes.
doctoral thesis, or let's do a deep dive and understand everybody's background. I mean, I don't know, maybe that'll happen for another class, but not the general public. And that's exactly right. You've been cast, right? You have been cast for better, for worse, for understanding the whole story, probably not. The 5-year-old has to understand it. You know, what's 5-year-olds cater to 5-year-olds? Walt Disney, the princess, the prince, and you're smart to take back the narrative of your own story. Because if you go back to that environment, which is not mentally healthy, it would not have been good for you, and you don't need it anymore. Why do you need to head back into a scenario that's setting you up emotionally to have a very difficult time? And the bottom line is they're interested in producing a great show. They're interested in having a successful show. So the mental health and well-being, it's not top priority. It's somewhere there, where the laws matter. And when you step out of it and say, I don't need it anymore. I got everything I could get out of it. I got a name. I got exposure. I'm taking it back and telling people who I am. And hopefully they'll see a different side, or the other sides of me. There are many different sides to a person.
I'm so lucky that I found a good group of people and creating a new community out here. And hot yoga has been a great way to like find those like-minded people. But I think in general, with the pandemic and all of the struggles that every single person had to face, with financial troubles, with being isolated, with not having, family or community, I think maybe that's the reason why people have short temper or are more mean, or, because we see the people break out in airports or like on a flight and people are videotaping it. There's all those encounters that we just see more often, I feel like. Do you think that that's a correlation?
It's a really interesting question. And certainly the pandemic helped us to view the world differently. And if somebody is really isolated and doesn't have a community they can connect to, it can make them more depressed or angry or anxious, and maybe act out and be more impulsive with their emotions. There's that. We also live in a world where everyone walks around with a camera or a video.
Yeah.
We can tape every single thing that happens that did not happen in the past. So that allows us to see more tumult around us and videotape it and share it and observe it and be shocked by it. So there's more taping going on and sharing, and things can go viral, as we know.
I will say I do believe that the pandemic did have a big impact with our society, with how people interact with each other, how there are more people that have social anxiety now, where they feel like they can't leave their house, they don't want to leave their house, they feel anxiety being in social settings around people, and that is something that we have to learn and grow with everything that happened. We were not prepared for this as a country, as a world, as a nation. And I think mentally it did impact a lot of people. And just having now different avenues of approach where you can sit at home all day on a computer and interact with other people and feel that social setting but not have to physically be there does a lot for others and has done a lot for people, not necessarily in good ways, though it can affect people in a better way that maybe never had a chance to be able to do something like that, and now they can. And it's affected people in negative ways where they don't even want to leave the house and they would rather have these relationships with people where they don't need to interact with them face to face, but interacting with them just behind a keyboard or even video chat, voice chat, whatever, that's good enough. You know what I mean? I know a lot of my friends have dealt with this where they feel like they have a difficult time going out and socializing since the pandemic. It's something that necessarily I was not impacted with. I think just who I am as a person, I'm a very social butterfly. I can interact with anybody. I can make friends with anybody. I talk to random strangers on the corner. Like, that is just who I am. I get it from my gram. She's way worse than me, guys. But I can recognize that it has affected a lot of other people. And I also worked throughout the pandemic. I was still working around people and working around other people in an office and going into the office until we couldn't go into the office any further. And even then, I still had interactions with other people. So for me, it didn't impact me in the same way, but I can recognize that it did impact a lot of people. And it's something that I can see and understand, though I personally don't understand because I wasn't impacted in that way. And I do hope for those people that it's impacted that they can slowly work their way to being able to socialize and be able to be out in the public and around other people and have that personal interaction with each other again. Because I think that's a very important thing that we need within our society. I do agree, though, that having that social media aspect and being able to interact with people on different levels from all around the world is also a good thing, though. With good comes bad, no matter what it is in life.
But I do think one of the problems is, and this maybe is social media related and maybe not only social media related, that the algorithms get us to connect with people that share our own values, viewpoints, political ideas. And so we're interacting in a bubble that's like, you're right, you're right. Oh, I'm so glad you brought up that point. Why doesn't everybody know it? But we're really interacting with like-minded people, which is easier to do. What we don't know how to do so well is interact with people who have different points of view and not have it devolve into either a verbal altercation or a physical altercation. And what we really need to learn how to do to, first of all, be smarter and just be better developed is how do you hold space for somebody who has a very different ideology or very different ideas than you have? And how do you have a useful conversation? And I think that's the next step. That's what we need to learn to do culturally. Otherwise, we're just going to be in little bubbles that tell us we're right. And that's a really very dangerous place to live.
Yeah, you're so right. It is very dangerous and feel like a newer thing that we're experiencing because what we're consuming on our For You pages or just our feed in general is biased to what we already like and what we already consume.
Right. It's a very dangerous place to be. We also have confirmation bias where we only see and read things that confirm our own mindset. And really the goal to be an intelligent person or a growing person is let me read something that's not my point of view. And it's a very hard thing to do, but I think our culture would be so much stronger if we learn to have conversations with people who have a different idea about something and hold that space for healthy doubt where we say, well, you know what? Maybe there's more to just my point of view. Maybe there's another point of view that would be just interesting to hear. We don't have to believe in it, but maybe just hearing it makes us a better person, a smarter person, a more valuable person in society.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is something that I love that my channel offers is that we do not have to agree with each other. I don't expect everyone to agree with my opinions about what I'm hearing and listening to, just as much as I hope that you can express to me how you are feeling and if they are different than my opinions. So we can have healthy discussions here, whether it be in the comments, whether it be during a live, any of that. That is something that I strive so hard for here, is that we can express how we feel like our feelings are valid, even though we might agree to disagree, and have healthy conversations with each other. I think we do a great job. I do know there's a couple that, just are there to say what they want to say and they don't want to hear what anyone else has to say, and that's fine. But there are a lot of you, and I really appreciate that you all can just tell me how you feel, tell others how you feel, because not just my opinion matters, but your opinion matters. And there are other people that might disagree with me that feel very much like you do, and that gives them the chance to express how they're feeling and open up. And like I said, it leads to conversation, healthy conversation. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're hurting my feelings by telling me that what they feel is different, because I respect the fact that we don't all think alike. We don't all feel alike, and we can have different opinions and still be kind to each other.
What about empathy? What is the disconnect that people have when they lack empathy?
Well, there are character pathologies,
Mhm.
and that's a problem with your personality that can interfere with empathy. People who are narcissists and maybe even have narcissistic features. So they may not be a full blown narcissist, but they have those features. They don't empathize with other people. There are certain diagnoses which make it very hard to empathize with others, and just a self-involvement sometimes where we're only looking at things through how we feel about a certain situation. But it's harder. Gail King will say this: it's harder to hate up close. When you see a person face to face, you get more information about them. It's harder to demonize somebody that you're face to face with. And it makes us step back and think, oh, they're a person just like me. Or maybe we have similarity.
Interesting.
And, it's harder. But when you don't have that, it's a flat screen. You're never seeing the person. You could just, if you're feeling angry about your life, you're feeling angry because this person reminds you of somebody that you dislike. I mean, in some cases, a lot of the personal judgment is not personal. In fact, it's kind of never personal. It's always about what another person raises for you. So if you see a person and you hate them, you have to ask yourself, why am I hating this person? Who do they remind me of? Is it a personality thing, or do they have features that I wish I had and I don't have? It always has to do with the person who is taking that other person in. And so it is really helpful to know it's not personal. It's something is being raised for them that we don't know. And maybe we're not that interested in knowing, but it's really useful information to have. So when somebody's really nasty, it might hurt, but then to say, it's not personal. And some people can't empathize and don't want to empathize, but it's a skill being empathetic, and it's considering another person's position. And it helps us to have successful relationships to say, oh, maybe my behavior did impact this other person, or wow, I never considered that this other person might have a totally different frame of mind. And we are better people, and we are better friends and family members when we can be empathic. I think that's always the goal, but not everybody is there. Sometimes people just need to stay in their rage, because if they don't, they may fall apart, or they may have to feel major depression, or they may have to kind of feel vulnerable. And not everybody is willing to look at themselves honestly. In fact, a lot of people have a lot of personal blind spots. And that's where therapy can come in, where you look at yourself and you learn more, and it can help you navigate life and friendships and success better.
And that's why I said it takes a lot of work to hate somebody than it does to love somebody. because it truly does. And she can say, like, well, don't take it personally because it's something that is reflecting on their life and how they're feeling about themselves, and they're just taking it out and all of that. But there are people that have so much hate in their heart, even if they don't even know you, that they will go to any length to make sure that you are hurting and that they can hurt you to the max so they can feel some kind of joy or some kind of relief that they're not hating on themselves. I mean, that's something that I truly will never get. And maybe it is because I have empathy for others and I sit here and I think, well, if I say that, is that really going to hurt somebody's feelings? Or is my words going to impact what somebody does? I don't know. I've always had empathy for others. I've always worried about how other people are going to feel if I say or do something. And I do feel like there is lack of empathy in our world, in our society, and it's only getting worse. And I do feel like that is something that we need to work on, and it's okay to be vulnerable. And I don't understand where this notion came that being vulnerable makes you weak. Being vulnerable makes you stronger, makes you more aware of your vulnerabilities, so that way you can become stronger, so that way you can recognize your vulnerabilities to be able to work on the strengths that you have. So, I don't know. What do you guys feel about this? Let me know down below.
Going back to kind of the beginning of our conversation, you were saying the reason why people are so mean to other people is because then they don't have to be mean to themselves.
That's
And
right.
so I think, you know, viewing that meanness from a new lens where you take it less personally and you
Yes.
actually see it as like data as of that's how this person thinks. This is how this person
Yeah.
maybe even thinks about themselves, because if you're being reminded of yourself in somebody
Mhm.
else's actions or
Yes.
misbehavior, and you deny that and you don't want to accept that as your own, or, you know,
Yeah.
empathize with
I
it.
think it could be many things, but basically, if you're an attacker, right? If you're designed to attack, there are people that engage in self attack. And the only reprieve they have from that self attack, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, no one wants me, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too dumb, I'm too smart, whatever the case may be. And they get to attack somebody else, which reality TV gives us this beautiful opportunity to do. Then, for a brief moment, they have the opportunity to shift their focus from being attacking of themselves to attacking somebody else so they can feel better in the moment. So it's almost like a public service announcement.
Yeah, if you can handle it. If you I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the education part, right? Because for somebody, I don't know, like me that like goes on to a public platform like this, and I'm not an actor. I didn't do it for, you know, acting opportunities, or I just did it as like a self-development thing to
Mhm.
overcome my social anxiety and also to develop thicker skin. I knew I would develop thicker skin. And thank goodness it was a gradual build. Otherwise, you know, if you're put on a platform like this and you haven't had that type of experience and you're being bullied and then you're being bombarded by a bunch of people online and you don't understand the psychological concept behind projection, then it becomes so dangerous, you know? So
It's very,
I understand what you're saying, but I also hear it as almost like an excuse.
it's not an excuse, but the more information we have, the better we are able to make choices.
My thing is, when are these people that are doing and saying these nasty, horrible things, people can literally go on their platform, make up cruel, vicious lies about you, start slanderous remarks about you, just defame you, and there's nothing that you can do? When is enough enough? When are they going to be held accountable for what they are doing to other people? When is platforms going to end the bullying and harassment? It's against YouTube TOS to bully and harass other people, but yet when you go to report it, nothing happens. Nothing ever gets done. They would rather have those nasty, vile people on their platform because they're getting the views and the AdSense money from them and all of that. When are we as a whole going to say what's wrong is wrong and people that are doing wrong need to be held accountable for their actions? That they're just not allowed to be cruel, nasty human beings. And we just accept it and have to get used to it and think, well, it's just them, deflecting onto me because they really hate themselves. That's not fair. That's not fair. Then this is like where my mind goes with things like this. It's something that I've dealt with being on this platform. It's something that anyone on any platform will have to deal with. And when people that have empathy and try to consider what other people are going through get pushed to a point of no return, and then they snap or they give it back to them just as much as those people were giving it to them, then it's a problem, right? Then they're the bad guy. It just doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot of hypocrisy and contradictions with social media that I just will never understand. And maybe one day our society will do something about it. I get freedom of speech. I get having your own opinion. But when is enough enough? When is too far too far? Do you guys get what I'm trying to say? Let me know down below.
It doesn't mean I'm going to be with my sadistic friend because it's better for them to be mean to me than to themselves. No, I don't want toxic friends. I want friends that feel good about themselves, are successful, so they can celebrate more of life with me. And it's not an excuse, but your instincts were right. I mean, you allowed yourself to be in an environment where it's almost like you took a speed class in learning how to deal with nasty triangulations and, being the subject of a lot of hate. But fortunately for you, you survived it and learned from it and benefited from it. There are people who don't have that ego strength, don't have the community, and they start thinking this is always going to be for me. The moment feels like it's never ending, and they can't tolerate the idea of other people thinking they're bad and horrible. And in some cases, it contributes to self-harm. Mm-hmm. And so I think we need to be really careful. And social media is a little bit of the Wild West. And I think we need to edit in a way that we reduce harming people or putting people at emotional risk. We see suicide is up for younger kids. We see depression and anxiety is up. This is all a contributing factor. We are allowing people into our lives that we may not allow into our homes. And that's really something to think about. So if you wouldn't allow them into your home, you have to find a way to not allow them into your head. And I think that there's a responsibility of these companies to monitor and edit out what's not okay to put up on screen. There are certain things that are crossing the line. And I think we need to have the laws catch up to technology and eliminate that from happening and putting people in harm's way.
And I completely agree with what she is saying. But I think there also gets to the point where what is bullying? What is harassing? What is stalking? You can define them from, Merriam-Webster's dictionary. But what is the definition when people are doing it? What is too far? What is them just giving their opinion and them expressing how they feel about a situation? When does the line become crossed? And when that line is crossed, then this is what needs to happen. This is what needs to be put in place. I think we live in a very money-hungry country, and as long as YouTube is making money off of people bullying and harassing people, they are going to keep letting it slide under the radar, just like TikTok, just like Instagram, just like any other platform. Drama sells. They know this. They know where the money is going to come in. And unfortunately, it's going to be with people that do push people to a limit of no return. Unfortunately, it's sad. And then once it gets to that point, then they're like, well, we didn't know, we didn't realize, like, da-da-da-da-da, like their stupid little fucking PR things that they put out there. And that is one thing that bothers me about YouTube. It's something I've been fighting for since I've been on this platform. And maybe that is something that we will have a story time for another day. But you live and you learn. And I do understand that there are things that people are not aware that certain people might feel or get impacted by what they do and say. And I agree, we need to edit ourselves. I think that one of the biggest lessons in life is do unto others as you would want done to you. If you don't want someone sitting there degrading you, harassing you, stalking you, then why would you do that to somebody else?
Okay, this might be a controversial question. Do you think that social media should eliminate the comment section?
Oh, well, no, but I think it should be edited, and a person can eliminate it for themselves and put no comments. Certainly a person can do that. And if they need to do that, I highly recommend they do it if they need to do it for their psyche. I think it's nice to hear other people's comments, and social media, just like anything else, can be really good or really bad. But it might be if you're going through kind of a storm, maybe you don't allow the messages in and let the storm blow over, because you don't need, or you, not just you, Rachel, but you, the general public, maybe it's, do you really need to hear everything somebody has a thought about? I don't think so. It's not necessary. And these things do stick in our psyche. And I do think, again, the law should come in and this comment's not okay, or they edit it. They look at these comments before they can be posted. I hope that we're moving in that direction.
Yeah, it's still very tricky because I've been dealing with that. And thank goodness that Instagram has the hidden words feature where you can eliminate certain words or ban certain words on your comment section so that when somebody types that word, it won't allow that person to comment. It will just say like this user doesn't allow comments of this kind.
Yeah.
And then they would have to edit it. And people, I still get negative comments. It's not like I've eliminated all the negative comments. People find creative ways to say.
It just means that you're relevant, right? You're a part of their conversation. You are in their psyche for whatever reason, because people don't talk about people that no one knows, that nobody cares about, right? But what I will say is that you can use all of this information maybe to be part of the solution. That somebody who's experienced it, somebody who's been targeted or been victimized by cancel culture even, it's like, it is tough and it's a unique experience. And when you come out the other side and it's not about you personally anymore, then maybe we can make some political changes, because it's a problem and it shouldn't be allowed. I mean, some negativity, okay, we can't be loved by everybody, but there's a line that's being crossed that shouldn't be crossed. And I think people who have experienced it need to be part of that change, of changing the laws, changing what's allowed, so that we can protect future generations.
Yeah, definitely.
Honestly, I think that would be amazing if Rachel got herself involved in trying to pass bills, pass laws that protect and help protect, where this line meets, where too far is too far or where it's just enough. And I think that it can also cause issues, especially in our country, because of freedom of speech. But that's where the platform itself needs to be able to make up their own rules and regulations for things like that, and not always have to rely on, well, it's okay in our government, so it has to be okay here. No, you can control your own platform and app. YouTube also has banned words. It's a wonderful feature. They have moderation where you can set your comments to be highly moderated, slightly moderated, or not moderated at all. That is also very helpful. I have it set, I believe, on low moderation, and it's been set for since I started my channel on that. I think that's where it sets for all creators when you start your platform, and then you can physically change it from there. It does help. I necessarily don't get a lot of things that are held for review ever, and if I do, they're in a whole different section where I don't even see them. And by the time I do see them, it's a little too late. I think that's another issue. I think that YouTube relies on the creator to moderate what they feel is appropriate and not appropriate, which I understand it's their channel and they're allowed to have sheep if they want to have sheep, or have people that speak their mind if they allow people to speak their mind. I think that's another issue as well. There are just a lot of things that can be done, that need to be done, and I do hope that she uses her platform for good. I've always felt that way about Rachel and her podcast. I just feel like after the therapist said that, she wasn't really too interested in wanting to change it or be a part of the change in that sense. Like, go out there and have a reason to fight for change and laws being passed. She didn't seem very interested in it.
Can you define the mob mentality? Because I know it dates back to like way back when, I don't know, someone who did something morally wrong would be like up on, they would bring them up on a stage and like guillotine.
Or not. Somebody who was a threat. Think about who was defined as witches, right? I think that they were women. I don't know what they were doing, but they weren't witches, right? Well, the mob mentality is kind of like groupthink. So somebody within that group would never think of maybe hitting a person multiple times. But if they're in a group, there becomes kind of like a group psychology where certain behaviors are made okay that are not okay. And people start to think less individually, and it's more of like a group think mentality. And so their individual ability to know right and wrong as they might as an individual, when they are part of a group, there's something about being part of a community, being part of something bigger than yourself that can get certain people to suspend certain morality, certain social codes, right and wrong, because there's something about the numbers that get people to feel I'm part of something bigger than myself. It feels right. It feels good, and suspend good judgment.
Yeah.
Or it can work the other way too. I mean, you can have a mob that stands for something great, but when we hear mob mentality, we don't tend to think of, oh, these are morally great people. It's usually an aggressive act where people give themselves permission to behave in really cruel and horrific and horrifying ways.
How do you deal with bullying in real life or online? Would it be like a different approach for each of those circumstances?
Well, I mean, as you said, there are online tools where just don't have any comments, don't have any likes, eliminate it totally. I was talking to my daughter who's 21, so she's obviously a different generation than me, and she eliminated TikTok. She's like, it was taking a lot of hours of my time. It wasn't doing anything healthy for me. The algorithms were sucking me in. My sister did it as well. Know yourself and be proactive about choosing mental well-being for yourself in whatever form that takes. So I highly recommend that. You can't always depend on others to take care of you. Sometimes you need to figure out what you need to do for yourself and your own mental health and just do it. When I think about bullying in schools and how physically aggressive it can get, it's absolutely horrifying. And I say that there, first of all, should be a zero tolerance for bullying. I think that there should be more education about emotional regulation and what our emotions mean to us and how we should handle them, and our tendency to want to pick on people who are weaker because it feels good without really having the empathy. Teaching empathy of how your behavior impacts somebody else, and that bullying really is a community issue. I think it extends beyond the school system and is a community issue where there needs to be a community at large that also gets involved and says, it's not okay.
But it's okay for reality TV.
Well, I think the assumption is that people are signing up for it, right? You sign up for it, you get fame, you get money, you get perks, you get this, all bets are off. And again, that's the end game. right? Why are you getting
Mm-hmm.
these things and I'm not? Or I would like to get these things too, but I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that there needs to be some awareness.
Yeah. I just think, it's so normalized on
It
our
is.
TV screens.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
normalized. It's considered okay. And it probably shouldn't, but a lot of things are considered okay that aren't okay.
Unfortunately, that's where you having control over what you know is best for you as an individual comes into play, because there is so many things that are bad that maybe shouldn't be allowed, that are allowed to happen but shouldn't be allowed to happen, or zero tolerance for bullying. But then you have to ask, well, what is the definition of bullying? Is this bullying or is that bullying? And where, like, calling someone stupid isn't as bad as, calling someone a cunt ass, stupid ass bitch. I mean, there has to be things put into place to know this is where it ends and this is where the zero tolerance is. Because technically, calling someone stupid is your opinion. You could believe someone is intellectually not smart. Is that really bullying them, though? By giving your opinion. That's where I say it's easier to regulate how you feel, your limits, what you know is best for you. If you know that social media is causing you mental health issues, then you need to have that willpower and strength to sign off and delete the app. That's where a lot of people don't have the strength, and there maybe does need to be put things into place where people can get the help that they need, that they're not realizing maybe caused due to social media and different things. I think more people are made aware of it nowadays because we are seeing the impact of social media and our mental health and how it impacts people in general, and we are more aware. And by us being more aware, we are more in control of what we need to do to better our situation or other people's situations, and be able to give that advice to other people as well. It's a really hard line and a really tough subject that more discussion needs to be had on it. I totally agree with this therapist that more conversation needs to be had, more communities need to be made, where they can put into play different things where it can be eliminated or helped or can better situations that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And reality TV is just a piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe as we evolve, but people always love to have an enemy, right?
Yeah.
When you have a common enemy, then you have a group of supporters.
Let's talk about that for a second. Yeah, because Brene Brown says common enemy intimacy is like a false sense of intimacy where you are bonding with somebody else over having
Yeah,
common enemy. Can you speak more about that?
sure. I mean, and not only that, it's probably just a form of well, I love how Brene Brown puts it. It's like a false intimacy, but some people are not capable of intimacy. And that's the only kind of intimacy they can have. Let's have a common enemy and then we'll form a group together. And it feels good in the moment. And again, we are aggressive people. I mean, when you look at, our primitive impulses and fantasies, Freud said crazy men, murderous men, crazy men act on normal people's fantasies. And it's this idea of we are animals. We have aggressive tendencies, right? That's why laws are in place. Thou shalt not kill, because sometimes people want to, but it doesn't mean you can act on it. But I think in reality TV, when we have a common enemy, and it happens in geopolitics as well, then it is okay to join forces and say, let's put all of our anger and hate in this direction so we can form an alliance. So it is strategic, it is done, but in terms of intimacy, sometimes it's the only kind of intimacy people can have.
Yeah.
They can't do anything else.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know why like Lord of the Flies popped in my mind. One of those classic books that you read in high school.
What do
Where
you
it's
think
just
the connection is for you?
I think just the chaos, like the utter, no government, no rules, regulations, and I think there was something like with the id and the ego and the super ego, some
Yes.
sort of symbolism with that. And
It is that. It's like that
yeah.
primary process before we're socialized, right? And
Mm,
it's like all of these impulses. And if we act on all of these impulses, every single one of us would be in prison. Okay. Every single one of us. And there's only so much freedom people can handle. Sometimes people can't handle freedom and they act in really extreme ways. And that's why kind of having a democratic government and laws in place helps people to organize their impulses and thoughts so that they can behave appropriately. But yes, I think Lord of the Flies is a great analysis of what happens when there's lawlessness. Well, there's chaos because there are going to be people who are out of control. And that's a pretty dangerous place to be, either physically or mentally.
yeah. And I feel like Vanderpump Rules is very Lord of the Flies, and it's almost like the morality is pick and choose. Like some
Yeah.
actions have consequences that are like extreme or fireable offenses, and others are brushed under the rug or even celebrated. And so it's a very muddled, confusing place to be.
And the rules change a little bit because it's also based on that interesting concept of money. What's getting more views, what's getting more twerks, who's the most interesting person, what's getting most talked about. And then the morality and the rules change because everybody wants to feel relevant. And so it's really throwing people into the mix who have a lot of self-interest, and that will shift and change given the rules. And the ultimate goal is to have a successful show. So if that means throwing a balloon in someone's face, then they'll throw a balloon in someone's face because the rules are different. That makes you successful. And we respond to our environment. We really do. And our environment can manipulate how we experience ourselves and how we treat others.
Well, I feel like we covered so much, and
So much. It's like a master class.
it is a little master class. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, you're a pleasure.
Feel like that conversation was so beneficial because when we look at reality TV and we see the way that people are interacting with each other and how it's normalized, we have to remember that that doesn't make it acceptable to treat other people that way in real life. And also, they are real people behind the screen. They are human beings that deserve respect. We all have the choice to be kind. So I encourage you guys to just take a beat before commenting on social media because your words do matter.
And maybe I'm the one that needs to reiterate this, but it's not just people on reality TV, Rachel. It's anybody on social media with a social media platform. You can have 100 subscribers to 1,000,000 subscribers and still be dealing with the same thing that reality TV people deal with or other celebrity people deal with. This is a social media issue at hand all around. And I feel like with her and her wanting to show what, reality TV is really like in her experience, I don't think that she has enough experience to continue to talk about reality TV and the effects where, like, yes, she can use that as an example to what she's talking about. But I think if she wants to use her platform for good and bigger conquests in that sense, that it can't just be reality TV. Like, here she is talking about social media in general and the effects of it, but she keeps going to reality TV stars and how it affects them, and she needs to first heed her own advice. She does things and says things on social media that necessarily aren't very nice and aren't very kind, and yet she wants people to be more aware that these people are human beings. Well, so is all the rest of your ex co-stars that are still on the show. They're all human beings too. Whether they can deal with it or not better than you, they're still human beings. Just like everybody else on the platform. Everybody else is dealing with it that may not even be a reality TV star and having the same issues that she's had or others have had. And that's why I say I feel like she needs to use her platform for bigger purposes, not just the reality TV of it all. I also feel like if she doesn't plan on being part of the industry anymore, then use your tools to benefit a bigger environment, like actors, actresses, reality TV stars, the whole big picture in general. Everybody that deals with being in the spotlight because of being on a show, a movie, any of that. There also needs to be things put into place for mental health for people that are on reality TV, because I do feel like that sometimes they do play into things and can affect people's mental health by persuading them to say and do things that normally they wouldn't to make for good TV. And I do believe that she can have a greater good when it comes to setting an example of, this is what I dealt with being on reality TV, and this is why I feel like there needs to be a reality TV star union that can protect people that want to protect these stars that are dealing with it, because Evolution, Bravo, the networks aren't, and they don't care if they are affecting people's mental health as long as it makes for good TV. She can do so much more with her platform if she really puts her mind to it. And maybe we'll get there one day, but I still feel like we're in a lingering zone where she's kind of stale. There are some things that she talks about that make for great podcast topics. And there are things like this where this was kind of a very stale episode for me. Did it highlight very important topics that not only I deal with on social media, but other people do as well? It did. And that was the highlight for me, was that this therapist touched on really good points and topics regarding what people deal with. I wish that she maybe elaborated more into that more than the reality TV aspect of it, but I can understand why they kind of focused on it, even though that's not what Rachel's about anymore. She's not on reality TV, and she's, yes, explaining her experience when she was there and the impacts that it's had on her, but where you are now, you are an influencer. You are on a platform. You have a podcast. You are influencing others by what you are saying and doing. And it's on a level that you as a whole should be trying to impact the platforms and the things that you're on to try to help other people and influencers on that network as well. That's just how I'm seeing everything. I mean, everyone's perspective is different. Everyone perceives things a different way. I love hearing what you guys have to say, so please let me know what you felt about this episode. What were the highlights? What were some of the pros? What were some of the cons? Let me know down below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and make sure you have your notifications set to all, because as soon as this gets processed and up on YouTube, I am going right into chapter 20. I'm also doing a Disrespectfully episode, and I have some other amazing, cool little things coming your way. So you want to be notified so you can get all the notifications when all the new stuff comes out. I hope you all have a wonderful night. Thank you again for bearing with me in my sickness and just me feeling like complete crap and getting this out a little later than I normally would. I really do appreciate that. Have a great night, everybody.
Wanna burn all the bridges between us.